Okay, I heated it up too much, so we'll turn the propane off and let it cool down. It's important to make sure you use stainless steel pots when you're brewing. Aluminum will impart flavors on your beer from the aluminum. You can use acrylic, but if it scratches, the inside of it can impart, or it can bacteria can harbor in there, and it can cause infection in your beer, which you don't want. Okay, while that's cooling off, we'll take our these are our specialty grains. The style of beer we're brewing today is called, the style is called ESB, which stands for Extra Special Bitter. It's an English style of beer. It's very comparable to, if you want to try a commercial version of it, Red Hook. ESB, you can buy at any grocery store or liquor store with a good beer selection. It's one of my favorite types of beer to buy. And it's characteristic because it's extra special bitter, has a very, very strong hops flavor, but then it also has a very generous amount of malt, which is the hops provide a bitter flavor, where the malt will provide a sweeter flavor, and then it just kind of, it balances really well, and it has kind of a dark malty flavor to it, which I like. Not dark, but full malty flavor to it. So this is done. You just pour it in this little mesh bag. Okay, then you tie it off. Okay, and we just drop it in, maybe seep it a little bit, make like some beer tea kind of like, and then it just gets all the sugars and the starch mixed in with the water that the water will convert into, the starches will be converted into sugar, which is fermentable for the yeast to eat. Then you just let it sit for about 25 minutes. Okay, so I do put labels on my beer, on a few of them, like the ones that require extra aging. I also make wine that I put labels on as well. This one I actually just bottled yesterday. It's a golden strong ale, and I put a little guy with a bicep on it. And the reason, this is a beer that's very light, like golden in color. When it's in your glass, you think you're drinking like a Bud Light with only 3.5% alcohol, but this will have 9% alcohol in it. Like I said earlier, stronger beers require extra aging time, and so that's why I put it in this one, so I can kind of set to the side for 6 months to a year and then enjoy later. The other one I have, in the bigger one, I called it a Viking Braggot. The reason why I call it Viking was in this type of beer specifically came from that area of the world. And what a braggot is it's actually more of a type of wine. It uses honey. It's like with barley and stuff like you normally make a beer, but instead of like a little bit of honey, like with a honey beer, it is mostly honey. So it's very, very strong. This one's 9.3% alcohol. It's actually more similar to a wine than a beer, but it has beer qualities because you got malt and hops and everything to it as well. But it's very strong. This one I won't touch for a year, and I just bottled this one 2 weeks ago. So this one I got to set and let wait. I'll show you this one that I have in this, and it's just like a normal keg. This is a little gun with CO2 cartridges in it to keep it pressurized to dispense, so you don't have to pump it like you do at weddings. It just dispenses. And as you can see, it's a very golden, light in color type of beer. This is what's called an extra pale ale. If you might have tried like a pale ale, like Boulevard makes a pale ale. Shafley's from St. Louis makes a pale ale. It's pretty good. Usually pale ales are a little bit darker than this. This is an extra pale ale, which means it's lighter in body, but has a more pronounced hops flavor to it. So it's this one was actually an all grain beer, so I didn't use the malt. One disadvantage of the malt, extract is that it makes the beer a little darker in color compared to the standard, because you're not just taking it, because it causes when you make the malt extract, it results in caramelization in the beer. So it's hard to get a lighter colored beer like this one when you do malt extract. That's pretty good. It has a very pronounced malt flavor to it. Just checking the temperature to make sure that it hasn't fallen too much. We're about 165 degrees, so we're still at the upper end of where I'd like to be. Remember, you should be between 155 and 150 and 170 is kind of where you want to be. Any more than 175 or 180, the husk from the grain will start to impart flavors on it that you don't really want. So we'll just leave that alone for a few more minutes. All right, now our grains have been soaking for about 25 minutes, so they're ready to come out. And then we'll take them out, and then we'll boil for about, we'll add turn the propane burner back on, and we'll add our malt, and then we'll boil for about an hour. Make sure you get all the liquid out of there. And it's really important when you're adding the malt extract to stir like crazy when you're adding it, because it can settle in the bottom and burn. And even it's better, I don't usually do it, but to turn your propane burner off while it's going. But and it's also, sometimes it's good, you can just put a little bit of the liquid inside of it, and it just melts, because the stuff is very thick. And at this point, unfermented beer is called wort or wort, and so sometimes if you hear me say that, wort, then that's what it's called. Okay. We've added in the first round of malt extract. We'll let that sit until it gets boiling. As soon as you see it start to boil, or even a little boiling bubble, you can go ahead and add your first round of hops, which we'll do after it gets done boiling. Okay. One of the things that I enjoy most about brewing my own beer, you're free to experiment with the different styles of beer. Most people think that beer is Bud Light, and there's a lot of different variations, a lot of different types of beer. And you also have freedom to kind of do your own thing and try something that just seemed interesting to you. For example, this one that I'm going to show you, I brewed a couple months ago. This is a Mountain Dew beer. I used with Mountain Dew, as well as the malt and the hops and everything. Just kind of a concoction I read about on the internet. Thought I'd give it a try, and it turned out surprisingly well. Most of the sugar that's in the Mountain Dew would have been fermented out, as well as some of the flavor, because the yeast eat all that. So what you're left with is a little bit of a citrusy flavor from the Mountain Dew, as well as the caffeine, and then it pretty much tastes like beer. A lot of people say it compares a lot to like a wheat beer, kind of like a Boulevard, because most wheat beers have a citrusy flavor to them, especially if you add the lemon. So then it becomes very similar to it. For this one,